Welcome to this session. In this session, we are going to discuss the differences between procedure-oriented programming languages and object-oriented programming languages. You know that there were many computer programming languages developed over the years by the computer scientists. So we are having a varieties of computer programming languages like first generation computer languages, second generation computer languages, third generation computer languages, fourth generation computer languages. The first generation computer languages are also called machine level language. So that contains instructions in binary form. Means completely binary instructions, ones and zeros instructions are there in first generation computer programming languages. And these instructions are very difficult to the users to remember. And these first generation computer languages were developed in early days of computer systems, that is in early 1930s. And almost for 2 decades, these machine level languages were used by the programmers to develop some of the applications related to the computers. But the problem with the first generation computer languages are remembering the instructions, because all instructions are written in ones and zeros, combinations of ones and zeros. So it is very difficult for users to remember these instructions, the combinations of ones and zeros. That is the problem. And any small application, if you want to develop, it generates a lengthy code in machine level language. So to overcome these difficulties associated with the machine level languages, so scientists have developed second generation computer languages. And in second generation computer languages, they have made instructions to remember easily. So what they have done to remember the instructions easily, every binary instruction is being replaced with small English words. The English words that contains 3 letters or 4 letter words are being used, and they are replaced with the binary instructions. So in the place of binary instructions, they have used small English words. Like most of the people are familiar with these instructions. If you have worked with microprocessors or microcontroller, you might be using these instructions. Move instruction, add instruction. For subtraction, sub instruction. For division operation, div instruction. And for increment operation, inc instruction. So like this, 3 letter words or 4 letter words of the English were taken, and they are used to replace the binary instructions. So using these English words, because words can be easily remembered by the human brain compared with the combinations of ones and zeros. So therefore people have felt it is easy to remember the instructions, and they used to use these instructions to develop the application. But the problem with first generation and second generation computer languages are they're highly hardware dependent. Means if you are writing any program on a particular computer hardware, and that program will work only on that hardware. If you move the program from one hardware platform to another hardware platform, the program is not at all executing. That is the major problem. And another problem is identifying the difficulties, errors in the program is highly difficult. And even for small applications, they produce lengthy code. So these are the problems associated with the first generation and second generation languages. Second generation languages were developed in 1950s. That is, second generation language is called assembly language. First generation languages are called binary languages, or machine level languages, or low level languages. Second generation languages are called assembly languages. And to overcome the difficulties of these first generation, second generation, third generation computer languages were developed. So they are the procedure oriented programming languages, and they are developed in early 1970s. A best example for procedure oriented programming language is C language, Pascal language, COBOL language. So these are the best examples for procedure oriented programming languages. Why they are called procedure oriented programming languages? Because the name itself it is representing that in these languages the main focus is in developing the procedure to solve a problem. Means a step-by-step procedure is developed to solve a given problem. So that is the main intention in the program. So less attention will be paid paid to the data. Means the security of data is not at all bothered. So we are not going to bother about the security of the data in the program. So that is, if you are storing any data in the program, that data can be modified by any function. That function may be belonging to your program, that function may not be belonging to your program. But it is possible for any function to access your data and modifying your data in the program. That is possible. Means for data there is no security. But today you can see the data need to be protected because every individual is having their own personal data. Suppose I am having my account information stored in the bank server. So that contains my account number, my account name, and the amount that is available in my account. All this data must be protected in the server and it should not be given access to any other persons. So security of data is playing a major role in today's technological environment. But procedure-oriented programming languages have ignored providing security to the data. Data is kept open in procedure-oriented programming languages so that any function can easily modify. Anybody can access your data and they can modify the data. And not only that, in procedure-oriented programming languages, they have used a concept called pointers. Pointers take the memory addresses as their value and directly going to that address location in the memory. Once you assign any address to the pointer, pointer can directly go to that memory location and it can access that memory location, and whatever data is there at that memory location, it can easily modify that data. So using pointers is the major drawback in the procedure-oriented programming language. So these difficulties were avoided in object-oriented programming languages. In object-oriented programming language, data is given high security. Nobody is permitted to access the data of the program just like that. So data is given high security. So other functions, non-related functions, non-related methods cannot access the data used in the program. And since using pointers, you can access any memory location of the computer and you can modify the data stored at that memory location. So therefore, in order to provide the security to the data, object-oriented programming language like Java, they have removed the concepts of pointers in the language. So since pointers are not supported by the Java, if you are developing any application using Java, the data is highly secure. That is the one of the great advantage with the object-oriented programming language. Means object-oriented programming language provides great security to the data, whereas procedure-oriented programming languages, they least bother about the data. And another difficulty with the procedure-oriented programming languages are when you develop any application using procedure-oriented languages, it generates huge code. Huge code is generated. So if the huge code is generated, what happens? Identifying the errors in the program is very difficult, and modifying the program is also difficult. If you wanted to modify some portion of the program, where is that location in the program? Identifying it is very difficult. And if any mistakes are there in the program, logical errors, or syntax errors, semantics errors. So if you want to modify, correct those errors, or modify your programming instructions, it is very difficult. But in object-oriented programming languages, so for developing the application, it reduces the size of the code. And another problem with the procedure-oriented programming languages is that as the length of the code is increasing, the efficiency of the compiler of the programming language is going down. So therefore, compiler will take more time to compile your program if lengthy code is there. And program execution is also very slow if your code is more. That is the problem with procedure-oriented languages. And especially if you take C compiler or C++ compilers, okay, or Pascal compiler. If your code is going beyond 50,000 lines of code, and these compilers, they can compile the program, they can execute the program, but the problem is the efficiency of the compiler will be falling down drastically. So therefore, it will take more time to compile, it will take more time to produce output from the program. But in object-oriented programming language, it is not like that. So the compilers of object-oriented programming languages are designed in such a way that they can compile programs having lakhs of lines of code. If your program contains 10 lakhs of code, 10 lakhs lines of code, so it can be easily compiled on object-oriented programming platforms. That is the great advantage, and efficiency of the compilers will not fall down with the increase of the code. And in object-oriented programming languages, identifying the errors in the program and uh, providing the security to your data and producing the response to your program is highly efficient in object-oriented programming languages. So, and in procedure-oriented programming languages, developing any application will take more time. If you are having large application, to develop a large application, yes, it will take more time. Whereas in object-oriented programming languages, any application can be developed quickly or as fast as possible because reusability will be there in object-oriented programming languages. But whereas in procedure-oriented languages, this reusability concept is very poor. So that is the problem with the procedure-oriented programming language. And sharing of the code is also not supported in procedure-oriented programming languages, whereas in object-oriented programming languages, the code once it is developed, you can share that code with anyone, and that code can be reused. Okay, so these are some of the differences between procedure-oriented programming languages and object-oriented programming languages. And procedure-oriented programming languages, main thing is that you cannot use it to develop real-time applications. And similarly, internet-based applications or web-based applications or networking-based applications are very difficult to develop in procedure-oriented programming languages. And procedure-oriented programming languages, they do not support real-time environment applications. Real-time environment applications are not supported by the procedure-oriented programming languages. Whereas object-oriented programming languages like Java, you can use to develop internet-based applications, distributed applications, network-based applications, okay, real-time applications, everything can be developed using object-oriented programming languages. So these are the difficult, whatever features are available in procedure-oriented programming languages, what are the features available in object-oriented, what are the difficulties with the procedure-oriented programming languages, and how those difficulties are overcome by the object-oriented programming languages. So these things you should know very carefully. And procedure-oriented programming languages, as just now I told, so they are the structured oriented languages. They are structured oriented languages. So whereas object-oriented programming languages, they use a concept called classes and object. Using these classes and object, any real world entity can be easily represented in the program. But that is not possible in procedure-oriented programming languages. And if you develop any application, sometimes there are applications, they require parallel execution. And the applications which requires parallel execution to provide services to the user community at high speed, it is not possible with procedure-oriented programming languages. Whereas the applications which requires concurrent execution or parallel execution, they can be developed using object-oriented programming languages. Okay, so these are the differences between procedure-oriented languages and object-oriented languages. So the main intention behind the development of object-oriented programming language is that the procedure-oriented languages are not suitable to develop real-time applications and not suitable to develop internet-based applications, not suitable to develop networking-based applications, not suitable to develop applications which requires concurrent execution or parallel execution. So therefore, the computer scientists thought of having a completely a new computer programming languages using some other concepts which can support all these things. The resultant is object-oriented programming languages. And today we are having many object-oriented programming languages in the market, like C++. It is also object-oriented programming language, but C++ is not a pure object-oriented programming language. And we are having Ada. It is also a object-oriented programming language. Today we are using Python. It is supports both procedure-oriented and object-oriented features. And Java is purely object-oriented programming languages that is widely used to develop today varieties of applications. And what are these object-oriented principles that we are going to discuss in the upcoming sessions? So with this, we are going to stop this session. So, thank you.